2022 meeting for the Beaufort County Airports Board agenda. And just to be sure we have a quorum, we are going to do a roll call check on attendance today to make sure we have an appropriate quorum. So just answer with an aye if you're here. If you're online, open your microphone, let us know that you're here and participating. All right, I'm here. Leslie, I know, is out today. She had a personal obligation. Ann
Aye.
is here. Trey, online? No Trey, okay. And Jim is here.
Jim here.
Chris is here.
Yep.
Mark, here today? No response from Mark. And Brian? Who's note that here? Brian is here. Thank you.
Yes.
Ian?
Here.
Sitting here. I know Tom is traveling today, so he's not here. And Nick? Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
One on
We
there.
have 6, 7. All right.
Can you hear me? Mark is online.
All right, Mark, we've got you now. Thank you.
Yeah, good deal. Thank you.
All right, we're good to go. Call the meeting to order. If you all rise for a moment, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public notification of the meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. By now, you all got copies of today's agenda. Anybody here or online have any changes, corrections to the agenda for today? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda as published.
So moved.
The second?
Second.
And second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. The agenda is approved. Same story for the minutes. You all received a copy of last month's minutes. Anybody with changes, suggestions, comments on the minutes as published? Hearing none, I'll take a motion, accept a motion to approve the minutes as published.
So moved. Second.
And a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, the minutes are approved. We now move into the public comment portion of our meeting. We do have 2 guests here, but we reserved a spot for you in our director's report section. So if the 2 guests will hold off until we call on you. Any of the public that has comments can make them at this time. Please limit that to 3 minutes. Anybody here that would like to address the board or any subject dealing with our airports. Hearing none, we'll move past that. And a minor revision to the director's report. Our 2 guests today, Russell Freed and John O'Toole, will speak, but I'm going to ask Steve Parry, our deputy director, to provide the director's report first. So Steve, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope everybody can hear me. Good afternoon. Welcome to the director's report for October 22. I am obviously not the director. I am the airport's deputy director, stepping in for John as he has another meeting that he has to attend to.
Steve, could you make sure that your microphone is on, please?
Just raise it.
Okay, I need to get it closer to me. That better?
Yep.
Okay. So like I said, John's at another meeting today that conflicted with today's board meeting, so I'm here for my inaugural director's report. First I'd like to talk about is HXD's terminal and airport update. Over the past month, John and I have been sourcing and resourcing several opportunities for future funds concerning the terminal and a lot of other projects that we have going on in Hilton Head. One of the sources that we're going after is the second BIL grant application, which we have submitted, and that's for funds for the terminal on Hilton Head, the new terminal renovations. Part of this past year's BIL that we did receive was the tower funds for upgrades. I've worked this month with the FAA and with a couple of entities that are familiar with the type of equipment that goes into the towers for the controllers to use to create a scope of work. That scope of work, once it's reviewed by the FAA, is going to go into a bid. So we're going to bid out for those funds so we can get our tower upgraded at Hilton Head. Employments and fuel sales for September of this year are a little bit declined from last year. As John has stated before, the reasons for that are a lot of the pilot shortages at the airlines. The aircraft that we had from the airlines last year were increased due to COVID states that couldn't use those aircraft. They sent them to Hilton Head. We enjoyed the extra aircraft at that time. This year it's kind of leveled back off to where we should be. So that's the reason for some of the small decrease or decline in the fuel sales and employments. We did, I don't want to say suffer through, because other people around the world suffered way more than we did with Hurricane Ian. Thank goodness it didn't give us a hit. I worked that day, John worked that day as well from multiple different airports, and we did not sustain any type of significant or even minor storm damage. So that's a plus. We were ready, all plans were enacted as they should have been, and every time we do that, we have lessons learned. So we'll always review those. Moving over to ARW, Beaufort Executive Airport. If anybody didn't remember or know, last month, of all people, my truck was parked over there, and we had a pretty significant storm. I was parked next to a pine tree. The pine tree got struck by lightning, therefore totaled out my truck because it was parked next to the tree. So that tree has been removed along with two other rather large pine trees in the parking lot. So that work has been done. A lot of credit goes to Paul working with the county engineering and stormwater out there to do that removal for us. Speaking of fun things at ARW, this Saturday is the second annual Flying Frog 5K, second annual with that name. This year, as it's been briefed before, we're a part of what's now called a Triple Crown in Beaufort. Beaufort runs several different road races. The other two have already been run, the Bridge Run, the Shrimp Festival Run. Ours is the last run in the 3-race run. That'll be this Saturday, so come on out and enjoy the fun and register to run and run on the runway. We've also been working over there at ARW on exterior renovations, which is the capstone to the interior, which has already been completed. The exterior renovations are moving along. The picture on the slide there shows what the outside of the terminal now looks like. It used to be a dark brown, needless to say, 1980s brick color. And now it's a off-white color. Everything's been repainted. One of the things that really has been enhanced is the handrail system to assist people. We got brand new posts in there, bigger posts, so nothing's rotted. Everything's brand new to hopefully serve the community a little bit better. We're still moving forward with other exterior renovations. I'm looking for a landscape company. I've got several that I'm going through now to do some landscaping around, and then signs for the interior and exterior over there as well. One of the action items today is including that exterior grant that I got from South Carolina, the SCAC, that you guys will be voting on for approval, and we appreciate that. Same story with ARW with September fuel sales this month compared to this month last year. Just a slight decrease in fuel sales, not a huge decrease. I think Hurricane Ian had a little bit to do with it. Nobody was flying. We had a lot of storms this year too. Remember, my truck got hit by lightning, but we had a lot of storms and there weren't quite as many people flying on those days. So I tend to contribute most of that to those reasons. To conclude the director's report today, the first thing I want to note is that beautiful aircraft. That's a B-17, which visited us at Hilton Head last weekend. I would really wish I'd have known more in advance. I could put it out there so people would come out and at least take a look at it. That's one of 9 B-17s that are still airworthy. if my numbers are right, in the world today. So he visited us, was able to take some people on tours. He flew around the island and flew over Beaufort a little bit last weekend, so we're extremely happy to see him. And if all the board members remember, last month, I believe it was, Mr. Chase Fulmer came in with his caregiver and guardian and promoted an idea for Chase to come over and help out with some handicap and safety issues. He did that at another airport. Chase, I had the pleasure of giving him a tour of our terminal and our airport, and what an incredible young man. As you can see in that video, I pointed them to where they could sit and watch airplanes at a picnic table, and we're going to call that Chase's picnic table. But as you can see, they went immediately over there, and he loves watching those airplanes take off and land. He just can't get enough on it. I was out on the ramp with him, took him out on the ramp, and if anybody doesn't know, the airline ramps, they have different markings for the different type airplanes to where they need to park. And he would look at that, oh, that's this airplane, that airplane's wingspan is this, and it weighs this much. He knew everything there was to know about airplanes that come into Hilton Head. He does his research, he's extremely smart. What a wonderful young man. So thanks, Chase, for coming and being a part of our airport. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's the end of today's director's report.
All right, Steve, I have a couple of questions. Anybody
Yes, sir.
else, before I go, anybody else have any questions to Steve on any
Steve,
part
I
of it?
got one that is probably being addressed. I was on the county airport site recently, and I noticed that we still have the very attractive and colloquial Frogmore logo up, but we're the Beaufort Executive Airport. Are we going to change
months. So an average, and we run these totals, but we run a total for this month or this year as well, but we don't have 12 months of data. We only have a portion.
Right.
So what I did is kind of just average it out to say, okay, what were our average ops? What were our average avgas? And like from 2018 to 2019, we had a decrease of about 200 gallons a month on average. Not a huge amount, but still represented almost 10%. Then in 2019 to 2020, we increased it 1,000 gallons per month on average. And then it was towards the end of 2020 where the ARW Improvement Committee kind of talked with John about the pricing, and we made a different change in pricing, and our numbers went up dramatically. So we increased it 2,900 gallons per month on average is what the difference was. But then I noticed, I meant to bring this up in the last meeting, and I just forgot. Now we've dropped back down 1,900 gallons. So if we change that pricing structure that we had from before, because the ops numbers are staying, the ops numbers are literally within 1%.
Right.
But our fuel flow is down 1,900 gallons a month, which is significant. So did we change the pricing structure from what we had done that was so successful bringing people in?
You're right. I wasn't here when a lot of that happened, Chris, and I'm going to have to defer to John on answering most of that. But if you and I can meet after the meeting, I have some information to be able to show you and help explain, if I understand your question right, a better way.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Anybody else?
Anything else?
Nope.
So we also would like to compliment Steve and John, as well as Chris Trey and Mark, because the transformation at now Beaufort Executive Airport over the last 2 years has been absolutely remarkable. Additional operations, fuel sales continuing to climb, except for a little blurb right here, and I'm sure we'll get that worked out to reverse that trend. But it's outstanding, and as I have in the past, if we have board members who have been out to see that airport and see what's going out there, I urge you to take a flight, go over and take a look. And if you can get there this Saturday, all the better, and see some of the events going on. So congratulations to everybody involved. Anything else for Steve? I have some stuff for you, Steve. We've talked about ARW. I want to come back to my pet projects over at Hilton Head Airport. Some while back when you and I and John, and I don't recall if Ann was there, and I think Brian and Chris was there, we talked about some of the lack of some of the maintenance going on at Hilton Head Airport on the county end of the hangar, the south end of the hangar. And to the best of my knowledge, nothing has changed. There has been very little maintenance done down there outside of recoating the ramp and the tarmac about a year and a half ago. Some of the hangars are not in good shape. There's paint peeling, chips falling on the floor, spackle tape peeling from the wall. There are skylights that were built in with the hangar. I don't think they've been cleaned in the 35 years that those hangars have been standing. The space between the hangars is now nothing but sand and debris. Long before you were here and long before John was here, there was apparently an effort to save some money, and we didn't blacktop the entire ramp. We blacktop only that portion of the ramp in front of the hangars and the leads out. There are actually sprinkler systems in those sandy places that I don't think have ever been turned on. I'm not sure they function. But in the meantime, there's been money set aside in 2 separate budgets. Nothing has been done. So I'm wondering when we get a chance to really support the tenants, your customers, on the county end of Hilton Head Airport. So sorry to bring that to you at this meeting, but
So
it's come up in the
I
past.
see how it is. The director's not here. Let's no. All kidding aside, those are very valid points, Howard. And I've listened to you over the years that I've been here. Two years, I think, that I've been here, and those are concerns of ours. There's a lot of other circumstances and issues that go into that. Staffing is possibly one, and I'd love to talk with you offline on some of those. I really would love to have a on-site visit at some point if we can get the Hilton Head side of the board together and have an on-site. enables me and the maintenance supervisor to see more accurately what you're talking about. Understand in between the sand pit and the stuff in between there. On that subject, I have done research on what material that doesn't cost an arm and a leg that we could get in there and fill in between each spot out there. There's several different materials I'm looking at, cost analysis from the county to look at on that aspect. I've gone through every one of those hangars. I go through those hangars personally at least once every 3 to 4 months, looking at a whole vast of other things, including the upkeep inside those hangars. So I would like an opportunity, if you guys would come out and let's get a time to come out and identify in the hangars exactly what you're talking about, because I've seen paint peeling in a couple, but not a lot. So I want to make sure that we are all on the same sheet of music as I move forward with making sure we're taking care of some of those things for the tenants.
All right, well, I think your tenants would appreciate a focus on that.
Absolutely.
I will round up the HXD side of the board and find out what your schedule looks like and arrange something that's convenient for you.
I definitely look forward to that.
Am I on the lease with Signature? Signature basically has control of the ramp, but
Right.
not the hangars. Is that right?
Well, there are two sets of hangars at Hilton Head. The north end hangars are really a through the fence operation. That's not county property. Those hangars are actually condo hangars.
Yeah, they're
The south end hangars is on county property. And while Signature doesn't control them, part of their agreement with the county, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, requires them to service the aircraft owners there. So if somebody needs a hand pulling an airplane out or pushing the airplane back into the hangar, and they call Signature, Signature will come and service that aircraft. Of course, they'll fuel the aircraft as long as you pull it partially out of the hangar so the wings are not inside the hangar. But they basically service that end, not the ground, not the underlying ground, but they service the tenants in those hangars.
and they get no other revenue from the rent of the hangars, correct? No revenue from
They do from the tenants there's multiple different styles of hangars. There's T hangars, there's different size box hangars, connected and non-connected. There's privately owned box hangars, there's county owned box hangars, and then there's a community hangar. And Signature has a piece of all of that. We have a piece of all of that, and then the owners of hangars have a piece of that as well. So we'd have to get in a sidebar and go through that agreement to be able to explain who's responsible for what piece and all facets.
Yeah, because of the maintenance on, if they're getting a part of the revenue, I would think that they would be part of the maintenance. They would be responsible for some of the maintenance, maybe not all of it, and that may be part of the problem.
The contract with Signature is a public document.
Yeah.
And I'll send you a copy if you'd like to see the agreement
Okay.
with Signature, but that's a public document, so.
Yeah.
I will, if any other board members just, send me a text or an email and I'll send you a copy of that. Or John or Steve will be happy to send it to you also.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? If not, we have, all right, thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You'll be back in a moment. We have two visitors today. We've talked about, from time to time, utilization of some of the property on the general aviation side of Hilton Head Airport. As you all know, we have one FBO, and that's Signature at the moment. While they are an outstanding organization, I believe the largest in the world, 200 locations, 200 some odd locations, very professional, but very, very expensive. But they basically, for all practical purposes, own the GA side of the airport. So we have some vacant land. It's very valuable land, and John has been, and rightfully so, been extremely protective. It's the last piece of vacant property that we really have on the airport. But we have two gentlemen here today that would like to talk to us about some very preliminary proposals for the utilization of that land. And they underline preliminary. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of discussion to be had, but it's nice to have opportunities to take a look at some options. So maybe John, if John O'Toole, who I have not met, if you'd like to step up and make a presentation, we'd love to hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Just so you know, we started the Economic Development Corporation, or I joined this Economic Development Corporation 5 years ago this week. We've booked about a quarter billion dollars worth of business, some 1,200 jobs, averaging about $47,000 a year per job. Not dissimilar to Ian's organization, we're focused on diversifying the economy in Beaufort County. When I got here that first week, John Ribaut handed to me this prospect, which I'm going to talk to you about today. You have a summary of it. We've called it Project Cloud since inception. In the past 5 years, numerous conversations with John Ribaut. The company has worked through heirs issues. There's a piece of land within the fence owned by the Canick family, some 3.75 acres. They have an option on that property, and that was confirmed today, that they still have that option in place. And they've worked through Army Corps of Engineers issues regarding a drainage ditch, is the way the Army Corps of Engineers deemed that property, which is in Hilton Head. And John has been very clear that the FAA's intention is to have operations secure and within the fence, and so we've pursued this opportunity. You should know, in the period of time I've worked on this, I've worked through 5 county administrators and 2 town administrators. So a lot changes. So I know there's a lot of dialogue that has to occur with John's organization, with Mr. Greenway's administration here in the county, and Mark Orlando and the council in Hilton Head. So there's a lot of moving parts. If you, in the punchline here is that, and I think you're going to hear another presentation which tells you there's interest in the county's property. And John and I respectfully probably approach this differently. I believe that as a board, you should see what the market will bear. You could see what the market will bear, and you can turn down all the options put in front of you. But I would suggest that John is concerned, and I understand rightfully, because you're kind of landlocked there in Hilton Head with all the different developments and conservation easements that butt up against the edge of the airport. Just so you know, over the last 5 years, we've met with the leadership groups at the Port Royal Plantation and at Palmetto Hall with no resistance to the project I'm suggesting. But I think the punchline is go out to bid and see what the market will bear, and then as a board decide that you don't want to pursue it, or you do want to pursue the options put in front of you. Now I'll tell you about the prospect I've been working with, and their project has gone up significantly, the cost of the project, with everything that's happened with supply chain, steel cost, and everything else. But this company I'm dealing with is, and I don't want to be seem at all at odds with what Mr. Freed will recommend as well, because my suggestion is to put any of your property out to bid and see what the market will bear. So if his project is the best project, that's what we're supportive of. We're not necessarily in the camp of one developer or another. But what I can tell you is that I do have a developer that if we got a green light today, they, and you can probably figure it out, we call them Project Cloud, but they are the largest reseller of Cirrus aircraft and also serve Embraer. They're looking to invest some $18 million in the site. They would like to develop an FBO next to the control tower, which I know John is very protective of, preserving that. And your answer could be partially, no, use the land at the north end of the runway, and we don't want to make that 3 acres available. But they're asking for the use of that 3 acres plus the 3 acres they've secured, which they would turn over to the county, and some 9.7 acres that they've been in conversation with Hilton Head with. And so their project would be $18 million, some 25,000 square feet under roof, 45 jobs that are averaging just under $60,000 a year. Going to the second page, we've had the Clemson Group look at the economic impact of this project. On over a 7-year period, it would generate on average 72 jobs a year and have $133 million output in the region across Beaufort County. We used a consultant group called Upper Atlantic State Freight. We've had conversations with the FAA. Hilton Head is going, and I know John, and I know this board is concerned about all sorts of financial constraints, as you look to expand the terminal, which I'd love to fly out of at Hilton Head. But the FAA would in all likelihood reimburse 90% of this land, so that would simplify the transfer of Hilton Head land to the county and to the airport. In the middle there, the FAA, with all the investments it makes in Beaufort airports and airports around the nation, is really focused on safety, also just investing in infrastructure, the 4 bullets there in the middle, innovation approach and new technologies, and to serve the nation efficiently. And so when we talk to pilots about what occurs at Hilton Head, and you mentioned his Signature kind of is the largest operator. They pretty much control that side of the airport. I think, the conservative model, I think the wise model is to create competition, whether it's on fuel costs. And again, if in conclusion, I'll just say this, I'd encourage the board to see what the market will bear. I just have one interested investor at this time. Mr. Freed represents another one, but competition is good. I think I strongly believe that while resources, land are limited, it's always good to see what the market would bear, weigh your options. I do think we have some guidelines in there of baseline revenue thresholds that bidders would have to surpass to be considered. We think that the revenue that investments on the, I'll call it the east side or the north side, could help support some of the issues that were just mentioned with peeling paint, skylights, maintenance, and perhaps even any bonds that are used by the county to underwrite the portion of your terminal that's not funded today. And so what I'll say this is really the conclusion. I know I sound like Columbo, who's got like several conclusions. What I'd ask for, I've been working with this developer for 5 years. Respectfully, I'd like a yes, not today, but after you've considered it, a yes, a no, or a partial yes or no. But what we try to do with all bureaucratic or municipal organizations, county organizations, is to provide investors with simple, swift, and certain answers. And so for that, they've worked hard on this for 5 years. They've invested engineering money. They've invested time with the Army Corps of Engineers. And if you can give us direction, then we would be happy to communicate that to this investment group. But again, I think to actually conform with the FAA, it's the only route to go is to competitively bid what you have out there and see what the market will bear, if you so choose. And that's kind of where we're at after 5 years of working with this particular prospect.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming and your presentation. I have a couple of questions, and I'm sure some other board members have a bunch of questions, so if you'll be a little patient with us. One, the Beaufort County Economic Development Corp., which is who you represent, is that a government agency, a quasi-government agency, privately held business? What?
Right in the middle, quasi, although I have to say that we are largely supported by the county, significantly supported, and then to a smaller degree by the 4 municipalities, Hilton Head, Bluffton, Port Royal, and the city of Beaufort.
But in essence, not a direct government agency, not
No,
for
it
the
is
county government, state government, or the Hilton Head government.
Correct.
The client that you represent, have they engaged in operating an FBO in the past at any airport in the country?
Yes, yeah.
They have FBO experience?
Yes.
Fuel sales?
Yes.
Maintenance?
Yes.
And the sources of funding you've pursued, you don't need to reveal those today, it's a little preliminary, but I'm assuming that the sources of funding for any proposal that they have made or that you're promoting for them is secure?
We believe so, yes. And I know there was some comment offline that what if this company, and as you see on the first page, invests $13 million there, and then they cease to exist? And what the answer is that you would have, 9 box hangars and a larger hangar there. The ultimate ownership of the property is by the Beaufort County and controlled by the airport board.
And they are proposing to also provide fuel sales to the aircraft?
Yes.
On the airport as well. Okay, anybody else, anybody who's signed in? Any questions from Mark or Brian? I think they're online.
Yes, I have a question, Howard.
Go to it.
John, this was sort of advertised to us as a preliminary report, but you've made it very clear that you've been working on this for now 5 years, I think you said.
Correct.
Is this a normal time frame to take to put a project like this in place? Or if not, what are the constraints that you've been seeing up until now that have been holding up progress?
It's a bunch of issues. Heirs property, as you know, in the low country can create challenges just in terms of, this 3.75 acres is today inside the fence. The families think that it has a certain value because it's on Hilton Head, but it's truly an island, inaccessible by the chain link fence. And the families thought that they had an easement through the fence to the property. So determining all that, working with John over the years, understanding how the FAA would look at a project like this, and it was suggested at the time that the investors that I'm working with should secure those rights to the heirs property, and then they would have the ability to not go through the bidding process, and it would be easy at the time with the administrators I started with on Hilton Head and in the county that they could just exercise a contract with them. As time's gone on, then we got into Army Corps of Engineers. So the company, John is very, and I think wisely, a fiduciary about his use of land out there. So he then said he'd like to see how it would be laid out. So they spent some time on engineering, and then it became clear that they needed a determination from the Army Corps of Engineers that took over a year and a half. So there have been wrinkles, to say the least. And I wouldn't call it preliminary. I really do think we're at the point where I've got a call on Tuesday with Hilton Head, is to just give these folks a yes or a no, and not to do that at the exclusion of what Mr. Freed is suggesting. I suggest at this point you put it out fairly, broadly advertise it, and see what the competitive options are for the board.
I have no doubt that that'll be John. John will look for all options and look for all opportunities to make the most productive use of the property. So I'm just curious. You're representing this group. It's a consortium, or it's a privately held business, or a public company that you're representing?
It's a privately held company with investors.
And are you representing them as an agent? I'm just curious as to why they wouldn't come to make a presentation as opposed to having the Economic Development Corporation make the presentation on their behalf.
We generally, while people are in a confidential stage, we represent those companies. But if your board would like to meet with them in executive session to talk about, their own viability, their own organization, but we're advocates, and I would like to advocate for Mr. Freed as well. So we're not doing it at the exclusion of any other investors, but this is complicated to get get a project through any municipality, probably in the state of South Carolina. And so we try to get involved to try to smooth those waters. And as hard as we have tried since John Ribaut had handed me this project in October of 2017, we have been working it. And so the investors rely on us to help them navigate these waters.
And so it would be a full, on top of what you're stating here, so train pilots sell and maintain high-end aircraft, it would be a true FBO then as well, with
Yeah.
fuel sales and everything else.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can see on the first page, they have a rendering of
Yeah.
what their operation would look like, which I think competitively, that would bring up the airport and probably put pressure on other investors to upgrade facilities there as well. And then there's also the area where they resell, they maintain, and they train pilots.
Question.
A school, a flight school. Is that,
This particular aircraft that has a parachute in it, they build their brand on the plane staying in the air. And so they like to have their aircraft maintained annually, and also the pilots trained on any updates. The neat part about this project for us as an economic development corporation, and when I leave here, I'm going to meet with a manufacturer out of Rochester, New York, who wants to build in Beaufort County after relocating to Dato Island. If people are using our county airport for this purpose, and the FBO that I believe Mr. Freed is going to represent, if one of those comes forward, or if they come here for a couple of days of maintenance on their aircraft, it actually helps our tourism business as well. So this is where the diverse economy and our blue chip industry, hospitality and tourism, kind of come together very nicely.
so I'm just a little confused, not extraordinary circumstance, but are they looking to incorporate into this FBO a flight school, a flight training school, or just a training facility for the Cirrus aircraft that is marketed?
It's my understanding it's to support the Cirrus aircraft.
Just
It's
as not a flight
not a
training.
flight school.
Thank you.
I have a question. Early in your presentation, you mentioned that people that own that piece of ground had an understanding that they had access to the fence. Is that resolved, or would that be litigated, or what is in your opinion, what is the current position of that question?
The question is, it's inaccessible. There is no legal document supporting their access to that property. And that was explained at the time by Josh Gruber, who was the acting county administrator and also a lawyer.
To the party that owns the land?
No, he was in the capacity of representing Beaufort County. And there has been nothing that's surfaced in the last 5 years to lend weight to a differing opinion.
So in your professional opinion, underline the word opinion, there would be no litigation involved in the disposition or sale of that land over that issue?
No, I texted the investors as I was sitting here, and they have an option in place, so the price is set.
So they have an option on it currently,
Yes.
but they have not purchased yet?
Correct.
Okay.
And if the airport were to decide that that parcel of the land that we were just talking about should not be made accessible to the airport, with the only portion of the land accessible to a potential suitor, is that piece that is, I'll call under the tower, by the tower.
Well, no, theirs is out at the north end. The 3 acres near the tower is owned by the county today.
But if that were the only land accessible to the developer, would they proceed with the project? Or if that were the only land accessible to the developer, would that end their interest in the project?
They say yes, but I trust John Ribaut, and I trust your judgment to make the determination of what you think is best for Beaufort County. And so if we give them an answer that says the 3 acres is not in play, you've got to make it work on the resulting 14 acres at the north end, then we'll find out whether they proceed or not.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
Just curious, do you think in your opinion, that Hilton Head Airport can support a second FBO?
I am not an airport expert. I know I have investors stepping up to say that they want to do it. I have heard from pilots when you talk about costs that people will fly by certain airports to get to other airports, but I only know that anecdotally. I would have to, again, I'm a believer in the market. You put that out there and you see what the market will bear. I drive through Beaufort County and I see a Circle K and I see a Parker's, and I go about 3 blocks away and I see another Circle K and another Parker's. I'm not saying that automobile and airports are exactly transferable, but I think we rely on the free market to determine what they want to do with their investments.
As Ann knows, because going back a few years, Ann used to fly into Hilton Head Airport, as did I and a few other folks on the panel who are pilots. There were two FBOs at Hilton Head. Hilton Head Air, which was only on the general aviation side. It was before we had the terminal across the way, and that was the terminal for the limited commercial service, as well as the FBO for the GA aircraft. And the two of them competed for a while. Carolina Air built their facility with a private family, and as things would have it down the road, Carolina Air seemed to attract more of the customers, and thus we had only one facility, and it was Signature that bought the lease and bought Carolina Air off the property and now owns it. So unknown, great question though, and one I'm sure that everybody thinks about. Can we support two FBOs? The last thing I think John would want, Steve would want, was to have a project like this get underway and even start and open, and then find out that it may not have been financially viable, in spite of the fact that we would inherit quite a bit of structure. I don't think the county is really looking to do that. So good question. Unknown, I think, at this time, but something certainly worth exploring in detail.
Anecdotally, people will build a motel at an interstate intersection, and there'll be then 7 or 8 or 9 hotels built at the same place. And the theory and logic behind it is similar to what you're suggesting, in that I know there's going to be availability, I know there's going to be service, I know there's going to be capacity at that intersection on the interstate. And I assume that's the same premise. Now, 8 or 10 motels versus 2 FBOs, I don't think are similar, but there is logic to support that basic position.
Well, I think you're almost bringing in your own FBO. They're already doing sales service. They're doing sales service and everything else. The FBO, other part of that, is relatively inexpensive. They already have everything there. They got a captive customer with their own planes coming in for service and everything else. So the FBO really is the least expensive part of the operation side, in my opinion. So it makes sense to just do the FBO. Well, you know what? And I don't think, out of all the places I've flown to for retail, where there's been retail sales, I haven't once seen where it's a retail section or service section, but isn't an FBO at the same time.
Economically, that's
Very interesting opportunity. I have no doubt that John, Steve will explore this in much greater detail. As I said at the outset, this is very preliminary. We appreciate, John, you coming and making this presentation today, and I'm sure the conversations will continue. We hope to see you back again, and at some point with your developer, to see what options are available. So thank you again for the
Mr. Chairman,
presentation. Yeah. Who we got, Brian or Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, Mark, yeah. I had one follow-up question, if I may.
Go right ahead, Mark.
And that question is, we talked about training, and the training would be for certain aircraft, only not a flight school. Talked about maintenance. Would that maintenance be for any and all aircraft, or just limited to the maintenance that is part of the one manufacturer that is interested?
No, they represent other manufacturers. One that comes to mind is Embraer. There are other aircraft that they'll maintain as well.
Okay, well, yeah, my question, okay, I understand you talk about Embraer and this other one, but if I brought my Cessna there, would it be able to maintain it there, or would it not be supported?
I'll get an answer back to John Rembolt. I don't want to guess on that, but
Okay.
I believe they'll service other aircraft.
Okay.
And we do expect them to work with the school system and area residents for hiring. And I know I'm going to get the hook here, but maybe in your January meeting, we'll have representatives back from SkyDrive. They're a electric vertical takeoff and landing that you might find interesting. Most of the airports in South Carolina are meeting with them to just go over some of the comprehensive planning issues around changes in flight.
One last tack on, and then we'll call it quits. Embraer, as you know, also manufactures a very large fleet of commercial aircraft. In fact, that's what flies into Hilton Head. Would this maintenance facility also service the commercial aircraft that the airlines use, or is it strictly for private GA aircraft?
I'll get John and/or Steve an answer, and you'll have that.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Sorry to
Thank
indulge,
you.
just one more question. Slightly different topic. With the land proposal as it currently exists in this document, would this project be zoned and taxable in the town of Hilton Head Island, Beaufort County, or tax exempt?
To be determined. That'll be a negotiation in terms of any kind of revenue sharing or whatever the case might be, because Hilton Head's going to be contributing if they decide to move forward with it. I'm meeting with their staff Tuesday. They've been briefed on it over the last 5 years, but there's some 9.7 acres that are in Hilton Head today.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you again for your time. Nicely done. All right, second, not last or least, Russell Freed has, again, another type of business opportunity, or similar type of business opportunity for Hilton Head Airport. Russell's also been talking to John off and on as well, so he is not a complete stranger.
Perfect. Thank you,
Go to
Mr.
it.
Chairman, and the rest of the board. It's the blue presentation for you. I've been talking with both Johns, actually, so it's been fun to see everybody here today. I did submit a proposal via writing to Chairman Ackerman and to Mr. Rembold. I hope that made its way to everybody else, which really summarized our proposal of a second FBO at the Hilton Head Airport. The investments are secured by myself and my father, who have formed a company called Freedom Aerospace. And a little bit about the history of Freedom Aerospace and who we are and why we want to do this. We've been flying airplanes out of the region here, collectively between the two of us for 20 years. And we've been operating out of the Savannah Airport predominantly because of the need for larger facilities and a larger runway. We're very excited at the developments that have been made at the Hilton Head Airport and Beaufort County Airport to make those more accessible to operators. So my background is in aviation, both from a piloting side, also an engineering side. I spent time at Gulfstream as a research and development engineer, spent time at Boeing as a research and development engineer. Most recently, I was on Wall Street as an aerospace investment banker, focusing exclusively on aerospace and defense transactions, large companies with a lot of deal volume there. So cumulatively, we've closed about $5 billion worth of aerospace transactions at my time as a banker, and they're the last one. So the culmination of my flying experience has been over 1,000 hours and type rated in a Learjet and flown all around the country. It's been a lot of fun. My father, on the other hand, who co-founded the family office with me, is a seasoned executive from the precision manufacturing world. He's grown and sold 2 companies, one being Defense Electronics, coaxial cables and connectors, cable assemblies, predominantly for satellites, cruise missiles, military aircraft. And the other business was medical devices, along with industrial devices. They actually made a lot of afterburner tubes for the F-14 Tomcat. So some pretty interesting engineering there. And that was a large global organization for him. So I say seasoned executive, right? They had over 3,000 employees spread across 13 plants in 5 countries. So it's a big industry that went through the IPO process, the whole 9 yards. So there's a lot of experience on the team from an operating point of view, a customer point of view, because we've been customers of the aviation industry for so long. We've seen how operators can do it well. We've seen how operators can do it poorly, and we really see a lot of room and demand in the industry for new investment. But the most important part about all this is we're local. We live in Beaufort County. We've lived here for forever. I was raised here. I went to high school down Hilton Head. I met my wife here. Her family's here. They're restaurateurs that own the Crazy Crab restaurants. So there's a lot of this is home, really, is the short way of saying it. And we want to continue to be here and support aviation, which is the industry we're passionate about. So flipping now to the next page here, there's a layout. And this is taking right out of the master plan of the Hilton Head Airport. So there's 2 proposed locations, one by the base of the tower, and then the other off to the right side of the page is new proposed hangar development. So we'd like to see a second FBO right in the middle of the field, under the tower, with visible frontage when you fly into the airport, because pilots, we're good in the sky, but when we're on the ground, we don't know where we're going. So we need the building right there so we see where we're going. Front and center with nice signs and then landscaping and striking architecture to draw you in, as well as operating hangars and additional growth facilities on the second site off to the right. And this new development, it's critical when we survey pilots in the area. There's a lot going on right now at the Savannah International Airport that's disrupting general aviation in the tune of a massive redevelopment campaign, where they're really eliminating a lot of hangar space at an airport that already had a wait list. Well, here at Hilton Head, we have a wait list, and myself, if I were the town, I'd want to increase our fuel flowage, right? I'd want to increase the amount of revenue generated by the town through fuel. I'd want to increase the amount of visits to Hilton Head. And when folks visit somewhere or choose to visit somewhere in an airplane for a long period of time, they want to know that their airplane can be put inside and taken care of, because it is a rather large investment that you don't want to leave out in a hailstorm or in one of our bad thunderstorms. So we're proposing to solve this demand issue by building a second facility. Pilots have a long memory and associate certain things with certain operators. So there really is a need for the design goals across the top of the following slide, slide 3, to change the dynamic of how FBOs operate, to be more hospitable, to be conscientious of prices. Across the top, we've got a couple things that we're really striving to do in our design. Of course, since the investment group is local, everyone we hire and then plan to hire, what we plan to do is a local first operation. Interestingly, Hilton Head is a destination for a lot of folks. Why can't the FBO be a destination in and of itself? We saw a video earlier of a gentleman sitting and watching airplanes go by. It'd be a much better view on the second floor of a building with a restaurant and some communal area to go along with it. We really want to mirror the spirit of Hilton Head with this building and this destination, and provide innovative customer support and a different kind of FBO experience than is currently out in the market. And lastly, since this is a new building built to current codes and new standards, we're proposing a very environmentally conscious design. We were just at MBAA 2 days ago, which is the largest business aviation convention. It was down in Orlando, Florida, and the focus was on sustainability. Sustainable jet fuel, electrification, really limiting the carbon footprint of aviation, because we can do it. It's easy. I shouldn't say it's easy. It's attainable. And there's been great advances made with unleaded avgas, which has just been approved across the whole fleet, as well as folks who are creating sustainable jet fuel, folks who are doing carbon offset. All that's great for the airplanes, but when the FBO still operates an old smoking diesel tug, from the 80s or earlier, we need to work on that aspect. So there's plenty to be done at the FBO level to support environmentally friendly designs and operations. Now, to support all this, like I said, Freedom Aerospace does have committed funding. Freedom Aerospace does have committed banking relationships. And Freedom Aerospace is right here, and we will continue to be so. We've engaged with several contractors and architects to date to see what this project actually looks like when you map it out. So, we're asking for a preliminary design period, a diligence period, followed by detailed design, which will happen lockstep with approvals from all the stakeholders involved to make sure this facility meets everybody's needs and goals, from the FAA and larger entities down to the local level, followed by a construction phase culminating in 22 months with the opening of a facility. And that's really what we're laser focused on. We're not in any other lines of business, so this is really our core line of business and our sole focus. And we'd welcome your feedback and questions on our proposal for a second FBO at the Hilton Head Airport.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Freed?
Thank you. Just a techie. Freedom Aerospace, what's the relationship with Freed Aero?
With Freed Aero?
It says Freed Aero on the last page, but you're saying that it's Freedom Aerospace.
Yeah, Freed Aero is just a shortened version of the name Freedom Aerospace.
Okay.
Chris?
It's not too different.
No. Freedom Aerospace just got very cumbersome to type out as an email address and for a website domain. So for ease of access, Freedom Aerospace, Freed Aero will all redirect you to the same place. So if you see on our email addresses and our website, it's freedaero.com. Our full legal name is Freedom Aerospace LLC. Colloquially, we in the disclaimer, we like to cover our bases with with all of the names that we may use at any point in time.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. So do you guys operate any FBOs currently? Or
No.
This would be your first one?
This is, as I said, our sole focus. We don't have other lines of business outside of our core investment thesis. And
What do you
FBOs.
think, what do you guys, preliminarily, what do you think the investment's going to be?
We think this is about a $5 million facility.
Okay. And do you guys have, so looking at the chart that you had, or the map kind of, and I think it's to the north, the area for the additional hangars. That isn't currently owned property by the airport now, right? This is property you guys would purchase?
I don't know the answer to that question. It's in the master plan as future development site. So
Is that the same area that we, I don't know, is that?
I think part of that, it's hard to tell from the Hilton Head master plan here, or the airport master
Yeah.
plan, but I think part of that is outside the fence, non-owned property. I think Mr. O'Toole referred to that in some of the negotiations.
Is that the same area?
I don't have it, but we can work on that.
Okay. All right, so that would be, and then the other,
now the perhaps where you're going is our primary build out is of the land under the tower. So
Yeah, that's what you're
not
looking at.
contingent at all on both plots.
okay.
However, as expansionary area, we're always interested in growing the footprint of the business to grow the business.
Right.
So the primary construction area, the primary location is the plot of land right there next to the tower in the center of the airport.
And it's not clear, or at least it's not clear to me, it's one of those confusing things I brought up before, what your intention is to build under the tower. Are you putting T hangers up, box hangers up, is it tie-down space, an FBO facility, combination thereof? What exactly are you looking to build under the tower, or by the tower property?
So it's an FBO facility, a fuel farm, and then after that, it's per our research. So we've got, preliminarily how we can lay out on the land a large box hangar. If we have the land available in the secondary site, that's perfectly suited for T hangars. Now, depending on what we can lay out where and what the offsets look like, we would like to also provide long-term T hanger space for folks, for long-term lease as well, tenants, local tenants for long-term lease. Initially, it's a multi-floor terminal building and a large communal hangar plus a fuel farm. With
So I'm going to bring up the same question that Ann correctly asked Mr. O'Toole. If you were to build out only that portion of the site, just that portion that's in or around the tower, is it economically viable to run an FBO without T-hangers? You're basically selling fuel and trench and tie down.
Without T-hangers, oh yeah. With one communal hangar, a terminal building connected, and fuel, absolutely.
So, sorry, you mentioned the idea of a viewing venue, food and beverage service. In your business plan, what's the F&B role play as a percentage of your gross revenue?
0. It's in our business plan right now, we just have hangar rent and fuel, and everything else represents additional upside.
But you're going to design the building, you're going to build the building to house that. And based on where it's at in Howard, you guys know better on the Hilton. Is there going to be any problem on public access to be able to get there? Because that's what you're going to need for your restaurant.
There's already all the road infrastructure and a massive parking lot that's not
that can
currently
get
being
to by the
utilized.
public, that the public can get to without an issue.
Well, no, the parking lot belongs to the fire department back there. That's their access. At the moment, for that plot of land, there is no access to the airport side of the fence at the moment. The only fence that exists along there for that portion is for the fire department at the moment.
Yeah, I'm imagining you could go, instead of turning left to Signature, there's an open area where, not too far from the picnic table where the gentleman in the video was sitting.
Opposite the convenience center.
That can all be, connected to that area we're proposing.
Well, to be determined, but understood.
And obviously, you believe 2 FBOs can, well, maybe you don't believe 2 FBOs can survive.
No, there's in reviewing the flight patterns of folks who's coming in and out, and by talking with pilots and also being in the area for the past 10 years, there's plenty of need for this facility. Folks who have their airplanes in Hilton Head now, whether it be whosever hangar it is currently in, whether they own it themselves or somebody else owns it, they fly their airplanes elsewhere to get fuel. So there's plenty of demand and need for facilities at the Hilton Head Airport.
Have you done any of the preliminary studies, land use studies that would be required to utilize that land? Environmental studies and anything else that goes with the land use?
So initially, because we've had these conversations with multiple airports and different folks in the area, in this initial period, we've been putting together business cases, using the satellite information, interviewing folks. What we are very cognizant of is the time of contractors and other folks to come out and perform work on a site without any knowledge of whether it's actually going to move forward. So all that we're proposing in a 90-day diligence window to conduct that work then.
And that's work you're willing to fund without any sort of commitment, with the permission of the airport's director and his office? Is that?
Was a 90-day.
It'd be within a 90-day exclusivity period. So we'd like to propose that all of that, is under a exclusivity window with us as the developer, and then at the end of the 90 days, review the detailed documentation for a go, no-go decision.
I'm not sure I understand the exclusivity provision. I understand you want 90 days to conduct the studies and determine whether or not.
But yes, we intend to fund the entire construction of this facility and lease the land long-term from the airport. So we're not asking, Mr. Rembold or the county for funding to complete any of the work required for this facility.
And at the end of the 90-day period, if it's determined that the land is viable for the use, what is your constraint then? Are you simply an open bidder for the land, or are you looking for a firm commitment?
That's something we'd like to discuss, as we move forward down the process. Initially, In a perfect world, we'd like a formal commitment, but it's always a conversation to have.
I'd refer you back then to John, to the airport director's office for that type of conversation, for sure. Is your intention to fund this out of family funds, or is your intention to fund this with venture capital money?
Family funds.
And you mentioned that you have at least investigated other airports, I guess, in the general area here. Do you have commitments from any other airport to move forward, or are you farther along in the pipeline as compared to Hilton Head?
This is the furthest project, the furthest along project. Other airports have said, thank you, but we reserve the spot for large aerospace corporations and commercial use, not for general aviation. So, as a general and business aviation thesis investment group, that was difficult for us to hear because there's a lot of value, as we all know, in general and business aviation. But at the same time, I understand their decision. So we're really approaching airports that are destinations that do see high business and general aviation values, and also that have a problem with monopolistic pricing.
Would you be willing to provide a bit more detail to John, to the airport's director's office on more specifically, the use of both pieces of land that are shown in the diagram here? It's kind of general here. You're looking for one large box hangar, multiple T hangars, maintenance facilities, no maintenance facilities. You brought up a restaurant. Jim asked you about restaurant. So there's a lot more detail that really needs to be considered before comparative plans can be analyzed properly. So I'm suggesting that you might get a little more detail together for John.
Yeah, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, have you guys done any architecture stuff yet? Have you had an architect? I know you mentioned.
We've done the conversations required to put together a timeline. The architect we've been in conversations with is currently doing 2 FBOs currently in the state of South Carolina and is familiar with what it would take to get one approved. So he's given his blessing to this timeline through his firm, and as well as provided considerations of what it takes to have a successful facility.
Mr. Freed, early in your presentation, you referenced support from a financial community. None of my business or our business who that might be. But towards the end of the presentation, perhaps in response to a question, you said that it would be totally funded by the family.
Correct.
I don't understand those 2 points.
The equity funding is coming from Freedom Aerospace. Other sources of capital would be, committed bank financing.
Thank you.
Howard,
Ann,
the curiosity's getting the better of me again.
now's the time.
Okay, we're a Part 139 airport. We need SITA badges. For both entities, how difficult is this going to be for construction, building, workers, everything that's going to be needed to build FBOs?
I'm going to suggest that's a detail that has to be accommodated somehow down the line, the same way we would accommodate the terminal expansion on the other side, because we'll have all sorts, and have had all sorts of construction people already out on the ramp, because as you know, that the extension of the ramp is already complete. So.
I think it's something both of you.
Yeah. So we've actually had detailed conversations with construction firms in the area who are actually performing work at Savannah, who also has, the TSA requirements for badging and contractors on the property. And they've mentioned that it's something they have experience in after constructing multiple buildings there, doing a lot of work at that facility. So we don't foresee it as an issue, since we've really gone out with somebody who's got a lot of experience with airports.
But you do know about it?
Yes, ma'am.
Both of you? Okay.
I've had one of those badges for a long time and worked with the badging offices for a long
Good for
time.
you.
So we're.
Hey, Ann, this is Mark. Your question is good. That's my line of business, and I think any of the companies that they would deal with to build facilities would be aware of that. That's just the construction world is aware of that type of an issue. So that part is normal part of doing business. However, you're right. Both proposers need to make sure they're aware of that. But I do have a question for Mr. Freed, and that is that you talked about lines of business. So I understand that right now you're talking about basically fuel sales and aircraft storage. Anything on maintenance, flight training? You mentioned restaurant. Any of those in the offing as well, or just at this point, just the fuel and storage?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and this will give me an opportunity to clarify my answer to Mr. Buckley. So currently, the model as it stands that shows this as an economically viable opportunity for private investment only includes fuel sales to tenant and transient customers, as well as aircraft storage under long-term lease to tenant, as well as short-term aircraft storage to transient customers. All of the other avenues that we've discussed, are potential growth opportunities for the business moving forward. And it's for that reason we really are excited about this project, because it's not contingent on both plots of land. The core business is able to be operated from the existing land inside the fence, and there are exciting possibilities to grow the business through increased geographic footprint for flight training and maintenance opportunities, and that's something we will certainly think about and have been thinking about. But the existing business plan that shows this is viable is purely fuel and storage.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Brian, Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Freed, I got a couple of questions, and part of my questions are just based out of confusion because I don't have your paperwork in front of me because I'm doing this remotely. But the project that just involves the land at the control tower, you're talking about storage of aircraft. Are you considering any plans for just outside tie down at that facility, or is there no room for that? That's my first question.
So that would be if there's room between the concrete pad and any sort of offsets created by the taxiway to have tie downs where the tail of the aircraft is against the edge of the concrete pad by the taxiway. So there would be spots, yes, and like all FBOs, there is plenty of line spacing outside. However, most transients in larger aircraft and larger general aviation aircraft do elect to store their airplanes inside, especially folks visiting Hilton Head in the summer if a thunderstorm pops up.
Because most people aren't aware of the fact that unless you actually own your own aircraft, that Hilton Head Airport right now is a little bit of a unique airport in that there is no public parking at our airport. All the land is either tied up by signature or the privately owned Northern hangar farm. And so you're raising a good point about the fact that transient pilots really don't have any options at this point when they come in here. So your project does not involve getting that second piece of property, but if you did, what I'm not clear about is where is that property, because it sounded like Mr. O'Toole's presentation that there's property there that's already tied up with their project. Is there another piece of property you're talking about, or are you talking about one in the same piece of land?
So I'm not sure what Mr. O'Toole's plot is. I'm purely going off of the released airport master plan that shows the departure end of runway 3 on the right side is a plot of land shaded green that has taxiways, T-hangars, and big box single-use corporate hangars depicted and called future developmental area. So that would be primarily what that piece of land in our long-term plan would be used for. T-hangars and more of a private long-term tenant-based area. Now, again, that could be used for maintenance, depending on the town's and the residents' sentiment for flight training and small piston-powered airplanes buzzing around constantly. It could be used for a flight school, but it doesn't have to be. So there's for anything that makes sense and fills a need for folks.
So Brian, if you want to see the material that was left by Mr. O'Toole and Mr. Freed, I'll get it to you on the way home. I pass right by you, so I'll give you a call.
Yeah, it sounds like one more question related to that. Are you expecting the airport or the county to buy that land and lease it to you, or are you looking to buy it yourself if the opportunity arrives?
We'd contemplate both options. It really depends on how it looks outside of just this planned, publicly released master plan that I've been referencing.
Right, thanks.
All right, thanks, Brian. Anybody else, any other questions? All righty. For us, very exciting. We'll finally have some discussions on the GA side of Hilton Head Airport, and I want to emphasize again, as I did at the outset, it's very, very preliminary. It's very, very early. There's a lot of detail that has to be fleshed out in this, both by Mr. Freed and Mr. O'Toole, with John and with Steve. So it is exciting, and I hope both parties will move forward with a little more comprehensive discussions at the airport directors level and make ultimately something happen for Hilton Head Airport on the general aviation side. So I thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Nice presentation, and hope to stay in touch. All right. We still have the rest of the meeting to finish up. Steve, we'll come back to you for, well, first of all, no unfinished business from the board. Okay, none. Let's go back to new business and some action items. So Steve, you're up again.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. As outlined earlier in my presentation, we're looking for grant acceptance for resolution to accept South Carolina SCAC grant 22044 for the Beaufort Executive Airport terminal building exterior renovations. As I mentioned, we're all used portions of HTAX, and the SCAC grant gives us more flexibility to continue with more landscaping, signage, gutters, water removals, things like that.
Anybody have questions for Steve?
I don't have a question. I wanted to be first.
You want to be first? Okay.
I haven't got a turn this time. I'm very competitive.
If there are no questions for Steve with respect to the grant acceptance, the grant 22044, I'll accept a motion to approve the SCAC grant of 22-044 for Beaufort Executive Airport's terminal building. Chris is the motion maker.
Yes.
Do we have a second? And there's a second. Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Support of Chris.
Any opposed? Brian, I see you waving. Good.
Aye.
Any opposed? If no, motion passes.
Thank you, John.
So Steve, I think that ends your inaugural meeting. Thank you very much for doing this. This is another comment period for our citizens, the vast majority who have left. So,
Well, you got a chairman update too, don't you?
do we have a chairman's update?
You do have it on your agenda.
Well, our chairman's update was really incorporated into our present.
I got one thing to update at ARW. We found apparently that is not much used, a GPU that mosquito control has. I would ask that we talk to mosquito control about the use of that GPU by the FBO. It's a potential income generator. But the other side of it is if it's a piece of equipment, it's not being used, it's just going to break. You know, it's going to have more repairs. So I'd like to, maybe we can talk to mosquito control about using that item, that GPU. And I think that would give us an additional benefit. Obviously for having the executive service, and also, as I said, an additional revenue generator.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I'll go over and check on the APU, the GPU.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, hearing no further citizen comments, I remind everybody that our next meeting is on Thursday, November 17th at 1:30 p.m. over at the council chambers at Hilton Head. We hope to see everybody in person, unless you have some personal emergency. it would be helpful. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Brian? Thank you for the motion. And Mark, a second?
Yep, you got it.
Good enough. All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
How everybody participated.
Take care.
All right, take care.
Ground power unit.